technology, which originates from ancient civilizations. Not only that, it originates from what we observe as natural portals in space in certain locations on our planet, not to mention the ancient man-made stargates. Egypt, Peru, Turkey, Lake Michigan, the Euphrates River, Bolivia, Sri Lanka, Arizona, England, all places that are home to structures that are known to be ancient stargates or gates of the gods or doorways to the gods. Now, we know that there are different types of portals. We have the common physical, visible energy wormhole-like portal, like the one you would see in the movie Stargate or Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. So this is pretty much a time and space portal. Next, you have a spiritual portal, which is more like a communication link to spirits that reside in the spirit realm or dimension, either through ritual or physical structure or object, like a Ouija board, for example, or Pokemon Go. And then we have what Cern is doing. It kind of reminds me of the movie The Mist. I mean, they're studying cloud manipulation and are pulling particles into our existence out of nothing. And this byproduct, antimatter, acts like a magnet of evil, truly the perfect weapon. They are stockpiling mini black holes. And what do black holes do? They suck. And the magnetic force of this antimatter is so strong, it's affecting the weather, particularly above Cern. It's triggering earthquakes. It is pulling the negative energy right out of people in the form of violence and madness. Go read the reports of what happens when they fire up the LHC. The reports of people absolutely losing their minds. I mean, the LHC is like one big magnetic coil. And these particles zooming around this coil charges it up. Now, they can suck or pull particles into our existence from what seems to be another dimension or dimension right next to ours. We know that black holes have extremely strong gravitational pulls. So what in the world are these tiny black holes pulling in? And don't tell me it's contained. They absolutely know the LHC has everything to do with the outside atmosphere and rhythms and energies of the Earth and Sun. This is why they have such a unique and astrologically coordinated schedule for firing up the Large Hadron Collider. So, knowing these outside forces are affecting the particles in the collider, doesn't that mean whatever you're doing to the particles inside the collider affect those outside forces? It seems to be a magnetic manipulation device. In other words, if you can control magnetics, you can control electromagnetic energy. If you can control electromagnetic energy, you can control matter. And if you can control matter, you can control reality. But any quantum physicist knows that you need a mind to control these things. And they have biology and theories. It's almost like an old one resurfacing. I'm just saying. Now, the discussion of time travel is another video. However, there is a phenomenon that is credited to Cern that I would like to briefly discuss, and that is this: the Mandela effect. Now, this is where things get weird, folks, and you're going to need to keep an open mind to understand this. The term Mandela effect originated in 2010 from a writer who attended an event from Nelson Mandela, but remembers Nelson Mandela dying years ago in prison, instead of being released from prison and becoming president and then dying again in 2013. So, a lot of trending theories came as a result of this, and it didn't take long before people began to notice that some things are not as they remember them to be. They find evidence of reality shifts. And I'm going to tell you right now, folks, the majority of the evidence to support the Mandela effect is crap. People are looking at world maps thinking they are changing due to the Mandela effect. They are drawings that have been changing since the first map. And the maps you've been seeing your whole life are not geographically accurate anyways. People can't remember that the Berenstain Bears has always been Berenstain Bears. spelled with an A, not an E. I remember this as a child because back then I noticed it was odd that it was spelled with an A instead of an E. That's how I remember it. People do this all the time with everything. They are just tiny inaccuracies in their memory. There is such a thing as psychological reversal, where you remember things backwards. They are remembering things the way they think they're supposed to be. The Mandela effect examples you find on the internet are absolutely horrible. They remember one word as something else because sounds like the, in sounds like and, on sounds like in. They remember the sound of the word, not the word itself. And the first thing they always say is, I remember it being this way. You remember? Great detective work, buddy. Now, don't get me wrong, folks. There are at the same time some very good, very convincing examples or evidence of the Mandela effect, such as the fact that when you type Mandela effect in Google Earth, it goes straight to the center of the Great Pyramid of Giza, such as Cern harnessing the power to manipulate our reality with their biological quantum computer. Even some of the examples pulled from the Bible are interesting. Of course, a lot of these are people just reading the scriptures as they are truly written and not what they remember hearing from a preacher. So I'm going to look at this closer. I'm going to find the real evidence for the Mandela effect, because right now people are confused and they are confusing others. And at the end of the day, the more they try to verify the Mandela effect with examples like the spelling of Fruit Loop cereal, the further they get from the truth, which is much, much stranger. I don't know. Maybe I'm the one in the parallel universe. Maybe I'm the one in the Twilight Zone.
I'm a physicist at Cern. We've done something we shouldn't have done. Connecting to other dimensions is real and we have achieved contact. Could this be real? We have sent emails to Cern to find out what they would tell us about this physicist. Everyone knows or feels something bad is going on there. Maybe what we're feeling is true. Stay paranoid, my friends. Here is the repost. Please be advised of the following. 1. I am breaking international laws regarding privacy and secrecy by publishing this information. 2. I am not going to disclose my location since I know that any attempt to prove what I've seen or what I've been part of will result in my immediate and thorough extermination. My name is Dr. Edward Mantel and I was, technically still am, a physicist at Cern, located in Geneva, Switzerland. I specialize in particle and subatomic research, focusing on quark interactions. In other words, I study very, very small particles and how they interact with one another at very high speeds. Until Thursday, January 15, 2014, I was a normal scientist living and working on the Cern campus. Most of the scientists who are involved in the branch of research that I am live on campus at the facility in Geneva and venture out only for social activities and the occasional visit home. Most of you who have heard of Cern will have heard of the LHC, Large Hadron Collider, the largest scientific instrument which exceeds 20 miles in diameter and travels under the sovereign territory of two countries, Switzerland, France. The public has been told that it was constructed at a cost of tens of billions of euros for the purpose of studying the birth of the universe, and the collisions that take place within the collider allow us a quick glimpse at certain phenomenon that can only be witnessed when particles hit one another at incredibly high rates. This is not what the machine was designed for, nor is it what the machine has been used for since its inception. Cern's main purpose for building the collider was to open a doorway. Allow me to explain. The doorway idea came into fruition in the 1960s. After years and years of attempting to hide UFO phenomenon, including large-scale and very public interactions such as the Roswell incident, and the Battle for Los Angeles incident well before that, the governments of the United States, Great Britain, and France decided to throw their weight behind the understanding of what precisely these objects were. The ideas flew far and wide. Were UFOs from another planet? Were they from another time? Or were they simply mass hysteria and mass delusion fueled by the overactive imagination of a public who were shit-scared of communists and their technology? No, they were none of those. Our universe is but one page in a large book. Think of a closed book sitting on a table. You see each page stacked on top of one another, bound by the spine and sandwiched between the two covers. Our universe is but one page in a vast and all-encompassing book. And our page is certainly not the only one with rich, in-depth thought and writing committed to it. Every page in the book represents a different dimension, each with its own unique writing, own unique story, own unique way of isolating itself from the other pages. No page was to interact with the other, just as no ink bleeds from one page to another in a standard book. Each page, a universe unto itself. Within a few short years of mathematical research and fleets of scientists working under threat of extermination should they share their research, the book idea was finally cemented. Though many disagreed, the mathematics were there to support the book idea, and the mathematics also showed us that it was impossible for one page to interact with another. That was, until the 1980s. During the 1980s, billions of dollars of research was funneled into the idea that if we used enough energy, if we used enough force, concentrated into a small area, the size of a pinprick, we could theoretically tear our page and get a glimpse of the page next to ours. We could open a door from their universe to ours. When the family, the code name for the group of scientists that functioned as the head of each of their departments at Cern, were shown the initial presentation in March of 1981, many of them expressed grave concern about the ramifications of opening such a doorway. But in the beautiful name of science, the family decided to share these ideas with the governments who constantly funded their research. At a meeting held in Luxembourg, the heads of state of the newly forming European Union, along with the United States and China, were shown plans for the construction of a colossal machine that would enable the opening of a doorway that could be closed at our discretion. The door would be opened, and the energy levels would be measured to prove that Cern had accomplished its task, and the door would be closed. Open. Shut. Simple as that. The government leaders threw endless funding at the family and the rest of Cern in the hopes of understanding what kind of power lay in another universe. Think of the possible endless source of energy, faster than light travel, weaponry that could obliterate enemies using laser. The possibilities for power were truly staggering. So, the public was fed one narrative, understanding the universe, and the family and governments knew the truth. Most of the scientists at Cern were kept completely in the dark. After all, the collider would perform its function as normal and collide particles for eager funding hunters to capitalize on. But the far more nefarious purpose would only be tested in the presence of the family and a few select scientists. I am the member of the family for my division. Obviously the original family have all retired or died out, but there is a new, younger, more eager to prove themselves group now at the helm, and the consequences of this were and are dire. So, with that established, allow me to explain what happened last Thursday. It was an ordinary day with the LHC scheduled to commit two collisions, one at 9 a.m. and the other at 6:30 p.m. Both went off magnificently and the experiments were deemed a success. We witnessed two full collisions and the general group of researchers were very happy with their work. Around 7 p.m., most of the team had filtered out of the observation room, and the machine had been put into its usual standby mode. As the room emptied, the ID clip that I had on my waist, which had a built-in display and vibrator, started to go off. I looked down at the display and it said in very faint green writing living room. I knew right away what they were going to attempt. I looked up from the badge and caught the eye of Dr. Celine Diacord, another member of the family and the head of plasma physics. She too had just looked up from her ID badge. We both understood and left. Living room was a large room under the main facility located in A section. The room wasn't special in any way and appeared completely normal. This was key to hiding our true intentions. If we met in a secret underground bunker instead of the regular basement, we'd arouse suspicion every time we were going to run an experiment. As Celine and I made our way from the collider to Section A, the cold Swiss air hit my face and burned as we booked it across the campus. The night was exceptionally clear, and this factor further bolstered my suspicion. They always liked doing these experiments on clear nights. We entered Section A and made our way to the main building. The doors opened up as we approached and we made our way to the elevators across the wide expanse of a lobby with the vaulted ceilings. The RFID signal given off by our name badges caused the elevator doors to open before we had even pressed the button. As we stepped in, the doors shut and the elevator began to move. "I'll never get used to that," Celine said, referring to the degree of automation that the buildings displayed. We had been scheduled for a meeting in the living room, and the building knew, so all strategic lights were on, and elevators were reading where we needed to go. The miracle of networking. We exited the lift and made our way to the regular boardroom. The door was shut and assembled inside was the family. At the head of the table was Father, a young, rather ambitious physicist named Sandra O'Reilly, designated Father, since she was in charge of giving orders to the family with respect to our clandestine experiments. The mood in the living room was never tense, but rather one of controlled excitement. The family had been attempting these tests once every 6 months for the past 10 years without much success. We had gone through several fathers, from the great Dr. Bert Ramberg to the lesser-known and constantly drunk Dr. Yao. Each had failed to achieve what the original family had planned. Billions were spent, but no door had yet been opened. "Tonight, we try 40 tera-electron volts," Father announced. Her announcement brought an immediate and total silence to the room. Family members looked from one to the other, some with feigned excitement, others with revered concern, all with a general sense of disbelief. The last 4 trials were between 10-20 TeV, we've never tried anything that high. "We don't know if the machine can handle a test of that magnitude," protested Dr. Akava, head of mathematical physics and chief of the department that should be certifying whether or not 40 TeV was even a healthy thing to do. "We have reviewed the possible outcomes, and even though we will have to pull twice the amount of energy out of the grid, the Swiss government have been advised and are cooperating," Father quickly retorted. Her sweet, controlled tone actually did help the situation. I looked over and Celine had been frantically writing down some calculations on a piece of paper. After a few seconds she shot up from her seat. "Father, even if we try to reach 40 TeV, the math doesn't support that this is possible. We can't just throw the collider to the highest setting and hope for the best. Are there any other objections that you would like noted before we begin the experiment?" Father asked, completely ignoring Celine's desperate pleas. Father surveyed the room and could see that she wasn't going to be met with other objections. After all, what was the point? They were going to go unheeded. "Excellent, then we shall proceed. Meet in the control room at 2200 hours," Father announced as the family got up from the table and left the living room. No one said a word. We left in complete silence, made our way into the lift, and exited the building into the cold Swiss night. If the machine couldn't handle the electron voltage, it could become structurally unstable and break apart, but being buried underground prevented this from being a catastrophe. There wouldn't be loss of life, but the LHC would be rendered useless and billions of dollars worth of funding would be destroyed. On the other hand, if the experiment was successful and the door opened, could we close something functioning on 40 TeV? Our math had supported 10 TeV, 20 TeV, fuck even 30 TeV, but no one had dared go above that. However, this is where our role as scientist ended and our regrettable role of secret experimenter began. All we could do was say yes. At 2200 hours, with the family assembled in the control room, and the handful of select Cern employees who understood the true nature of the experiment milling around, we commenced our grand try. Begin, was the only order that Father issued. The family members at the control entered the required programming to begin the collider, and so our fateful experiment began. Release the first particle sample, came the command. A few seconds later the sound of gas entering the collider could be heard. The gas started its 20-plus mile journey around the collider, gaining more and more speed. Release the second particle sample, another sound of whooshing gas entering the tube and traveling into the opposite direction as the first. Both gaining speed, traveling faster and faster, approaching the speed of light. Like two runners, running around a circular track in opposite directions, not touching one another. "Father, we are approaching 30 TeV," one of the commanders warned. "Excellent, increase the energy to 35 TeV within the next 3 minutes, Father's commands once again brought grave concern. If anything was going to happen, it was going to happen now. Increasing to 35 TeV came the announcement over the intercom system. We all continued to look at one another, the concern growing graver and graver. Achieving 38 TeV, another announcement. But nothing, no explosion, no catastrophic failure, nothing. In theory 40 was possible, but never advisable. However, at 38, no specific structural damage signs were noted, nothing. 40 TeV achieved. We looked at one another in astonishment. We had achieved what we thought was impossible. 40 TeV of energy was pushing the particles through the collider and we were sustaining it. As the two particle clouds whizzed past each other, our first indication that something different was going to happen started to occur. There was a sudden spike in the temperature of the room. We could feel that it had gotten warmer, and the first reaction was one of panic. "Shut the machine down!" came the first exclamation from a family member. "The machine is heating up, explosion could be imminent," she continued. "Wait!" exclaimed Father, her eyes glowing with the reflection of the computer screen in front of her. "Look at the core temperature readout, they haven't changed, they're perfectly normal." We each looked at the closest computer screen we could find, all of them showing that everything was going well, except for the fact that the thermostat in the room now read 35 degrees Celsius, when we started out at a pleasant 20. Could this be it? "Commence the collision sequence." Father barked the order into the microphone near her control console. "Collision in 4, 3, 2, the methodical voice announced over the intercom. An ethereal blinding light consumed the room. I had never experienced anything like this before. The temperature dropped back down to 20 degrees, and the light was overpowering us. We couldn't see our own hands in front of our faces. Suddenly there was a blood-curdling scream, like someone being horribly beaten, followed by complete and total silence and then darkness. "Is everyone okay?" Celine was shouting from her side of the room. "I'm fine," I called back, "sound off." Mantil, code, FAM 0113D Accord, code, FAM 0115 Chung, code, FAM 0114. The family members present started to scream out their names and code designation as our eyes adjusted to the total darkness that had encompassed the room. With the sound of a bang, the emergency red lighting bathed the room in a lambent glow. We could make out shadows, but no distinguishing features. By this time, approximately 2 minutes after our encounter with the white light, we still had not heard Father sound off. "Where is Father?" Dr. Chung called out. We all turned to the seat that Father sat in, and could see a lump on the chair, but no sign of her. I entered the panel code to open the emergency exit and made my way through the escape corridor to the lighting box at the end of the hall. I turned the breaker and the normal lighting filled the control room again. Panic struck for Father's well-being. I turned and ran back into the control room. All of my fellow scientists were in complete and total awe. Nothing in the room was out of place, and the temperature had returned to normal. However, sitting in Father's chair was a pile of her effects. Celine ran up to the chair Father once filled and looked down with a gasp. "She's gone. All of her things are here, her jewelry, her clothes, her tamp, everything. Where father sat now rested her physical possessions. She had vanished into thin air. After this message he went on to say one final thing. Prepare now for the terror ahead, John 3:16, Hosea 2:16 Selah. I just don't know. Paranoid I am, paranoid you should be. If you are, stay paranoid my friends.